Today we're going to be discussing how to service and repair both the Haskel EXT420 and the 59025. Internally, those are identical pumps. They're pumped slightly differently externally, but the the resealing is exactly the same. So to do the resealing, we will require a variety of tools to do that. We have a variety of wrenches, a 3/4 inch open-end wrench, 3/4 inch socket, a 3/16 Allen wrench socket type, adjustable wrench, torque wrenches that we can use for both inch pounds and for foot-pound measurements, mallet, and a variety of screwdrivers. We will also need a couple of special Haskel tools to do this. One is what we call the bullet tool, and it's used for lining up the shaft seals as you put the pump, reassemble the pump. Then also this tool right here is for disassembling and reassembling primarily disassembling the cycling valve. This is the EXT420 right here. These are the various parts of the pump. This is the air drive right here. So compressed air goes into this section of the pump and causes a piston, which we'll be looking at as we take it apart, to go back and forth. This is the gas section of the pump right here. So your gases that you're handling, typically can be propane or butane, will be going in here, and as this piston in here moves back and forth, it will compress the gas and push it out at a higher pressure out this side over here. This is our muffler right here. This is where the spent drive air is exhausted out the muffler right here. In this area right in here, which we'll be also showing in detail in just a few moments, is where our shuttle valve is, or our cycling valve. I'll use the words interchangeably, but it's the same thing. It's a shuttle valve, and that's what causes the entire pump to sequence. All the pumps, when they're shipped, do come with a full assembly drawing. Here on the first page of this drawing, it has a bill of material for all the parts that are in the pump, all the top level components, and the material of construction, the name of it, and the part number, as well as the balloon number in the assembly drawing, which we'll be looking at in just a few moments. And then as we go to the next pages, we will see, you'll see the actual drawing where it points out what parts are, and there's a balloon which corresponds to that bill of material on the first page. And then on the third page, it has the internals. It shows cutaways of the pump and how the parts all go together internally. Now, what I did already is, what I like to do is, I have taken a drawing and I've highlighted it. Makes it easier for me to see what parts I'm looking at. The different colors represent the different seal kits. This particular pump has 4 different seal kits that are used for a full rebuild of the pump. So the green lines indicate the parts that are in the air drive seal kit. The yellow line indicates the parts that are in the cycling valve kit. The red lines indicate the parts that are in the gas section, and the blue lines indicate the parts that are in the distance piece kit. So again, for a full reseal of this pump, you require all 4 of those kits. And then what I've also done is I've gone through, and on the assembly drawing where it shows the internals, I've highlighted all the different bullet numbers with those same corresponding colors, so that when I look at things, I know which kit I'm looking at. I've also gone through, now these are our seal kits right here. So this would be the part number 16771, and that is the kit for our cycling air control valve. And on the envelope here, it lists all the parts that are in the bill of material. But what I've also done to make it easier for me is I've gone through already and I wrote down the bullet number on the little envelope. That way, when I've got the pieces out and I'm looking at the assembly drawing, I don't have to go back to the bill of material to verify which part number goes with which bullet number. Is already written right on the envelope. Also, the 2 kits for the air drive and the cycling valve include packets of lube, Haskel part number 50866. This can be purchased separately in a tube like this, or we sell it as a 5.3 ounce tube also. But we recommend this to be used in the air drive and the cycling valve whenever it's sealed, and during preventive maintenance, also lubricating the cycling valve with it. Each each of the two kits does include one of these, but you can just use, if you're doing the whole reseal, you can just use one packet for both sides. There should be plenty of grease in there, and keep one for later on. All right, first thing we're going to talk about is preventive maintenance, what you have to do on this particular pump to keep it running so you can minimize the frequency that you have to reseal the pump. The most important part is the air cycling valve. To get to that, that is inside behind the muffler. So, usually you don't even need tools to do this. I'm able to just use the moment of this pipe right here and push it up to loosen it. Then I can take this pipe off right here and set that aside, and then I'll loosen this right here until it comes off. And then using some needle nose pliers, I can reach in and pull out this shuttle valve right here. Now what we want to do when we pull it out just for inspection is we want to make sure it's well lubricated. There's a lot of lubrication on there, and this is a well lubricated shuttle valve. And we also want to inspect it to make sure that our O-rings are not cracked, torn, or cut, or anything like that. And also that the O-rings still have a plump roundness about them. And this one here looks to be in pretty good shape. We would just put a little bit of lube on all of the O-rings. Just rub it onto the O-rings. And a little, if you put more lube on there than you might think would be necessary, that's okay, because the extra lube will blow when the pump cycles. It will actually blow into the air drive to help keep the air drive there lubricated. So when we're done with that, we just put it back into the pump, and we reassemble it. The other thing I recommend doing on a very regular basis is checking the pilot stems. I'm going to turn this around right here. So to get to the pilot stems, we just loosen that cap with an 11/16 socket. When you're taking this off, as it comes off, be careful, because there is a spring behind there. So we take the spring, we set it aside, and we take our needle nose pliers and we gently pull what we call the pilot stem out. Now, to inspect the pilot stem, what we want to look at is make sure it's straight, and also we want to wipe any of the deposits off of the stem. Get it clean, and also we want to inspect this O-ring right here to make sure that it's in good shape and there's no cracks, cuts, and it's continuous all the way around. When we're done with our inspection, you put more of our grease on the shaft there, and we reinsert it. Put the spring back in. And we can repeat the process on the other side here. Again, we will wipe off any deposits, any debris that are on the pilot stem. Make sure it's straight. Make sure the O-ring's in good shape. Put a little bit more lube on there. And put it back together. when you're reassembling these, there is no specific torque spec. You just want to have it snug down, bottomed out, snug down. All right, and that would be your general upkeep type service to keep the pump running well. If you keep the cycling valve and the pilot stems lubricated, the pump will give you the best service, minimizing the need for doing complete reseals. But occasionally it will be necessary to do a complete reseal of the pump. So we're going to start with the cycling valve where we were just at. So again, to re-access that, we'll take this back off, pull out our cycling valve, put right there, and then what we also will do is we will use this special tool. And the sleeve that we're going to pull out has a lot of holes in there, so we just put it in there, and we let one of the this little metal prongs fall into one of those holes and catch it. And then we just we can use the okay. Grab a little pliers. Okay, there we go. This is the sleeve that the cycling valve, the shuttle valve runs in, and you can see it has 4 O-rings on there. So we want to make sure that these are well lubricated. But just for example, we will be replacing these O-rings momentarily. Also inside this unit, we also have what we call a bumper. All right, success. This is the bumper right here. Actually, this one you can see is a little bit beat up. And on one side we've got a rubber surface, and on the other side there's a metal ring. So when we put it back together, we want to make sure that we put it in so the rubber is facing our shuttle valve, our cycling valve. So one of these kits here is the 16771 has the various O-rings that go into the cycling section, the cycling valve. So again, this is the bumper right here. So now what we'll do is, and again, I already have the bullet numbers written on there, so we can compare that to the drawing. See exactly which parts go where. So 43 goes onto the cycling valve, 44 goes onto the outside of the sleeve, and then there's one O-ring right here also. That's number 45. So to remove the O-rings from the shuttle valve, it's just a matter of getting a screwdriver and knife and take the O-rings off. Set them aside. Wipe it down. Now we'll do the same thing for the sleeve. And finally, the O-ring that's on the connector here on the plug. Now we'll begin to put the O-rings back on the parts. First we'll do the O-rings that go on the shuttle valve, or excuse me, the sleeve. So what we want to do is we want to put a little bit of lube on these before we reassemble them. We want to minimize the amount of lube that gets into these air passages. side now. Next thing we'll do is the shuttle valve itself. Now, a lot of times this requires 8 O-rings, but a lot of times there'll actually be an extra O-ring or 2 in the kit, so don't worry about that. The O-rings we just did actually had, I think there was 9 or 5 O-rings in there when we only needed 4, so don't worry about extra parts. And as I mentioned previously, you really can't put too much, well, within reason, you can't put too much lube on here because the excess lube will blow into the air drive to keep it lubricated. And this is something that may often have to be done even though the rest of the pump is not being serviced. So it's just these may have worn out, but the rest of the worn out, but the rest of the pump is performing just fine. All right, now we're ready to start putting it back together. So these parts right here are our parts that we'll be getting rid of. Oh, I'm sorry, we have one more O-ring. All right, and now put this unit back together. We're going to start with like a relatively long screwdriver, and we will take the new bumper and we will put it on the screwdriver. Again, the rubber will be away, towards the handle of the screwdriver, away from the end, and we'll just now allow it to drop into place. Take our sleeve. When we put the sleeve back in, we want to make sure that the short, the end with the O-ring closest to it goes in last, like this. And then we push it in. Until it bottoms out, and we will drop our spool in. Screw that in place. Now again, this is it's only torqued to 15 inch-pounds, so you just basically go finger tight with it, and then we can screw our muffler back in. Oops. Screw our muffler back in like that, and that is how to reseal the cycling valve. All right, continuing on, we'll now start to work on the main part of the pump if we're going to do a complete reseal. So we will take this back off, or at least this off, so it's not in our way. If this was an EXT 420 and it still had all the hardware on there, we would now have to take the manifold tubes off right here before we take it apart any further. If it's a 59025, you will take this interstage connecting tube that's on right there off right now. This pump already had them removed, so we don't have to worry about that. We're now going to open up the air drive. To open the air drive, we remove these 4 tie rods. These are 3/4 inch sockets. Air drive apart. This is what we call the end cap right here. This is the other end of that pilot stem we just serviced a few minutes ago. These are what we call, this is what we call the pilot tube and the flow tube right there. Back to that. Now we'll take out the gas section. To get to the gas section, we loosen these cap head screws right here. These require an Allen wrench, a 3/16 Allen wrench. Inside here is the gas section where we're actually compressing the butane or whatever gas, butane, propane, or whatever gas we're handling. Okay. Next thing we want to do is we want to separate this piston and its shaft from this piston and its shaft. So what we'll do is we will pop open this screen right here with a small screwdriver. It just popped in there. And there's actually one on this side and another screen on this side right here. We'll pull them both off. And then we want to rotate the shaft so that we can see the cotter pin. Inside the distance piece hole there, you can actually see as I bring that piston down, you can see a cotter pin coming into view. Now what I'll do is what I was doing earlier is I will rotate the shaft right there. Now we will open the cotter pin, which is easier said than done sometimes.
Challenge, as it were.
Yeah, especially in these tight quarters here. We just push that pin out here, flip it over, grab it with our needle-nose pliers, and we set this pin apart aside. Now what we'll do is we will separate the two sections. So the drive air barrel and our air piston. The air drive is now completely disassembled. So this is our lower end cap and what we call the distance piece. The distance piece is a vented section. Oh, and here's the cotter pin that fell out, which we no longer need. So right there. The distance piece separates the air drive from the gas section to make sure that we don't get any contamination between our process gas, the propane or butane or whatever gas you're running, and the drive section. And any leak, you just vent it out through this port right here. There are a couple of seals in the distance piece. We'll look at that first. Our distance piece kit 17327, which is this kit right here. It only has a couple of parts in there. We have a seal and two O-rings. This O-ring here I'm not going to worry about today. This is deep inside of here, almost never needs to be replaced. If this O-ring needs to be replaced, it may be time to get a new pump. It's that worn out, but it is available. And give us a call if you ever feel like you're leaking compressed air and this needs to be serviced right there. The other two parts are this bearing and this, or the seal and the O-ring to load the seal. To pull the old one out, take a small screwdriver. So first we put the O-ring in, just into that hole that's right there where the old O-ring came from, and then we just do the same thing with the seal. And we've got a new seal in place on the distance piece right here to separate, to hold the drive air into the air drive section. The next section we're going to look at will be the air drive itself. The air drive is in kit number 16772. It has a variety of parts. This kit here does include an instruction sheet with it. It kind of details the same things that I'm discussing here, where the O-rings go and how to replace certain aspects. So first what we'll do is we'll get all the O-rings out. We have one loose O-ring. This is our main O-ring that goes on the main piston right here. Since it's out, I'll put that in right now. So we take our old O-ring off. O-ring, we'll put it back in place. And this one actually is not, it doesn't seat real tight, so don't worry about that. If a little bit slop in there is what we expect. And then we'll put a little bit more O-ring on the outside of it now that it's there. That's the O-ring lubricant. We'll put more lubricant on there. So we want to make sure it's nice and smooth in here. It's a good idea to run your fingernail across in there. Make sure it doesn't catch on anything. If it does, probably time to get a new barrel. Okay, we'll put more. There's also an O-ring where this air barrel goes into these shafts right here. There's an O-ring there, so we'll replace that O-ring right there. Take that O-ring off, and this O-ring off right here. Take our new O-rings, and again, there's more. It says 2 on the package, but you can actually see there's far more than there's about 4 in there. That's okay. A couple extras or something for you. Kind of go around it once or twice just to make sure there's no twists in the O-ring and everything's seated properly. And this drops into this groove right here. Again, same situation. We'll just go around. Next thing we'll do is these. This is the pilot tube. There's an O-ring on each end of that. We will pop these O-rings off. It's bullet number 27 for those O-rings, so I've already got it marked 27. Take the O-rings out. Now we'll pull the bigger one off. Do the same thing. The air tube. We'll set it aside. This one's duplicated, it's in both kits. And again, this is the one we only do if there's an air leakage coming out of this section right here, which is very, very rare. So we will set that O-ring aside, that's right. Alright, and what's left now is to service the pilot stems. So to service the pilot stems, to actually, if we're going to replace them, again we'll take this cap back off. So we take the cap back off, pull the stem out, we'll set the stem aside, flip it over, and then inside the pilot stem you've got an O-ring and a lock washer. So we'll just stick our needle nose in there and we'll just kind of pry them out. And there's O-ring and lock washer just came out right there. So we'll set that aside. To Put them back in.
We put new ones.
Where's my pilot stem? So we take, what we'll do is we'll put this lock washer, we'll put it on the shaft of the pilot stem over the O-ring. Put it in place, and then we'll take our hammer, tap it in place. And then we'll repeat the process. Put this back together. And if I was assembling a new pilot stem there, I would put a, I would definitely want to lube that up, but we just lubed it up a couple minutes ago. Tighten that back down. Now we'll do the same thing on this side. One thing to keep in mind, these are two different length pilot stems, so make sure you don't get them confused if you have them both out at the same time. They are marked, and you can figure out which pilot stem goes on which end using the drawing if you do get them confused. Always don't normally have to replace them, but it's always a good idea to check those springs on the pilot stem when you have it apart. Make sure they're still they're in good shape, they're not cracking or anything like that. And we tighten the cap back on again. We just need it snug. All right, the air drive has now been. Oh wait, I have two more O-rings. Where these go? Let's see. Yeah, 32. Oh! These O-rings here go on the caps of the pilot stems right here. So I should have put, when I had the caps off, I should have put these new O-rings on there, but we'll be fine. We'll set all the air drive parts over here for the moment. And we'll now start working on the gas section. And when we work on the gas section, we do not use any lube on the O-rings. Everything is dry in the gas section. So we're going to move all the lube out of here.
Yep.
Okay. We're now going to work on the gas section, the last part of the pump. Now, again, I think I mentioned this. The gas section, we use no lubrication, so get your hands clean and use use a clean grease or clean rag. I mean, a little grease won't hurt anything, but we try to use as little grease in there as possible. So we want to move the grease away from us for the time being. So the seal kit for the gas section is 29017. Now that includes Viton O-rings in there, so if you're using a 59025, make sure you're using seal kit 29017 and not one of the other kits that has neoprene or EPR or something like that in there. So one of the things in the gas section kit, it comes with a very handy instruction sheet on how to reseal this part of the pump. So I'm just going to kind of work off of this instruction sheet as we go through this. The first thing is telling us to install the upper and lower. Okay, so before we get to that, we have to remove the gas piston. So to remove the gas piston, we pull this sleeve out. Now we push the. This is our gas piston right here, and the sleeve is right there. So by tapping the shaft right there, I was able to push the piston out past the gas body right here. Now we have a pin. So I'm going to use this small Phillips screwdriver right here. And in this hole right here, there's actually a pin. So I'll use the small Phillips screwdriver and put that right there with this mallet. You can use a nail or something like that, and then we'll just tap out the pin. Once the pin is out, then I can use my wrench and loosen this right here. There we go. So I loosen this nut right here that holds the gas piston on. Now I can pull these, tap out the gas piston, and we've got all the parts now come out. So this is, we'll talk about these as we go, but this is just a shim right here. This is our piston right here, and this is our sleeve right here. We'll talk more about these as we go. So the next thing we do is inside this shaft right here, or inside this hole right here where the shaft goes, there are two bearings and seals, rod seals. So to replace those, we'll use a small screwdriver. This one is easy to get to. And it's a split seal, so if what you want to do is you want to try to find that split. And underneath it. And then we put our pliers and pull it out. So you can see this is the split seal right here, and behind it is right here. I can't remember. H. Yeah, there's an O-ring and oh, there it is right there. It's an O-ring and another seal. So we'll now replace those. Now we'll reassemble it. So on the top one here, we'll reassemble it so the O-ring is towards the top right here. So the O-ring is on top and the seal is on the bottom. So we'll just push it in there, bend a little bit, and get it into our position right here. All right. Now we'll put our split washer, or whatever it is. Our seal, our split seal, and you can see it's got a split on it, and that split, you know, because without that split we'd never get this into the groove there. Mm-hmm. So we will kind of fold it over like that as we drop it into place. And then now that's the easy one right there. The other one's a little bit more challenging. To get to it, you have to go in through it's about there. So the best way to get to it is through the back side. And that's where you need long, skinny fingers. Okay, split sealed out. You've got one right there and one right there, and they face each other. Keep going, you'll make it. All right, now we repeat the process. So first we'll put the seal with the O-ring in there, and then we'll follow it with this one right here. Okay, then we'll put the bearing in. Again, we'll squeeze it in. now. Should be able to push. Get that later on. But you can see, looking through, the seals and the bearing are all in place. Now they may not be perfectly in place, but when we push our shaft through, that will seat everything properly. All right, that's the tough one right there. If you get through that, the rest of this is a lot easier. So we have this big bumper right here is actually it's shaped. So you want to put it in so that
So like a Bellevue washer?
Yeah, exactly. So that when you drop it in, you want it to be, the cone.
Concave to the bottom?
Yeah, exactly. Concave to the bottom. And then on top of that, there's an O-ring. Item number 52. This O-ring will drop in on top of that. It just drops in on top of the, right on top of that bumper. And let's see, place the O-ring behind the bumper and install the sleeve. The sleeve, when you put it in, you'll see one side has a
chamfer.
Chamfer on it, and the other side's much smaller chamfer. The big chamfer goes in first. It just drops in like that. That O-ring will actually sit inside that chamfer to make the seal there. Put the piston rod in. So when I put the piston rod in, that's where my bullet tool gets used. So I slide this in with a bullet tool. That way I don't damage my bearings and my seals. My piston assembly is right here. I'm taking the seals off of this yet. I'll take the seals off of this. We have the main Teflon seal on the outside, and then behind that is loaded with a Viton O-ring. And then we screw down this till it's snug. The holes line up, and then we have a spiral pin as part of the seal kit right here. Where'd the knife go? Probably buried somewhere. There it is. Put the spiral pin in place. Got it. All right, so our piston's back in place, and put the spacer assembly back to now. Okay. Now it's just a matter of reassemble all this. Let me see what other parts I have here that we haven't put into place yet. 53. This O-ring right here goes on air cap right here, or the gas cap. Take the old one off. Put the new one on. All right, now we start putting everything back together. Okay, this doesn't have to be tight, we just want it to be kind of, and we'll tighten it up in a minute, but we just want it to move more or less in position right now. Now we're going to have to put the air shaft in there in a moment, so we have to position it so that the cotter pin lines up. So right now the shaft is sticking too far this way a little bit, so we will see if... So now there's a hole that I have to push this pin through. And I think I've got everything not lined up. Wait, no, I got it lined up. Alright, now I got the cotter pin in, I just have to spread the legs. Okay, there we go, finally. Now we will, let's get the air drive put together now. So we're going to take the other end cap. We'll put the pilot tube in place and the flow tube in place. Last but not least is the check valves. So to service the check valves, we just take, these are the inlet check valves here, we take the fitting off. And then it's always, when you do the check valves, inspect, there's two springs in here. This one's got some gunk on it. You want to make sure these springs are all in good shape. If they're beat up, or that's an indication that the pump's been being driven too hard. Yeah, nobody in this industry drives it too hard, I can tell. So the actual parts that we reseal is Teflon seat right here. So there's actually, on the inlet check valve, there are only two replaceable parts when you, in the seal kit. That would be the seat and this O-ring right here. So we'll replace both of those. Actually a second O-rings, but again, even though they're not in the kits, always inspect your springs. Make sure they look like they're in good shape. If they aren't, you need to replace the springs. You can order those separately. And we're going to put this back together. And it just we've got the seat, the ball. Then actually, this sits in there. This is a retainer. The ball sits on that. The ball, then the smaller spring, and then the retainer, and then that all screws into the check valve here. There's no torque value on this, so we just want to get it tight.
Tight.
Yeah. And then we do the same thing to the other inlet check valve right here. These are the outlet check valves right here. There's an extra O-ring in here. And they do go in differently, a different order on this one here. Again, when you do this, make sure you have the drawing with you to help you. Make sure you get everything together right.
Rolling.
Okay, and finally, we put the protective screens back on the distance piece. Voila! Okay, now we're done.